Happy Monday, another edition of Motorsports Today, getting rocking and rolling. We're live on TikTok, also available on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, and the like. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Charlotte Roval in the books, round of 8, and Joey Logano is still alive in the playoffs. We're going to break down how the race unfolded, how it ended, look ahead to the round of 8. Formula 1, 2, wild one at Singapore. George Russell makes a statement. More drama with McLaren, even though they won the Constructors' Championship. We're going to dive into that too. Plus, some news that came out right after Tropper and I did the last episode on Friday. NASCAR getting testimonials from all the team owners that signed the charter agreement to discuss their side, and some interesting comments from people like Joe Gibbs that we will get to later in the show as well. Eddie Kalegi, Adam Tropper, Tim Moore here with you on Motorsports Today. You can follow us on all the socials at Motorsports Today, including our YouTube channel, which has just been popping off. Apparently, all we had to do was post one Denny Hamlin pit stop, and we get 700 subscribers. I don't know how that
and
works
1.4 million views. Don't forget that.
Yeah. I was like, what? So that's pretty cool. So if you're new to our stuff, thank you for checking all of that out. If you want to, you can also check out our website, motorsportstoday.net. But let me run you through what you might have missed from the past weekend with our pit stop. So starting with Formula 1, Singapore Grand Prix, George Russell, driving for Mercedes, picked up his second victory of the season, while Kimi Antonelli finished in 5th, the first time in his young career that the rookie has scored back-to-back top 5 finishes. Max Verstappen finished in 2nd, continuing his hot streak since the summer break. But the story, of course, the McLaren group. Lando Norris finished 3rd over Oscar Piastri. So Norris climbed 3 more points closer to Piastri, now 22 back in the Drivers' Championship. With their 3rd and 4th place finishes, enough for McLaren to clinch the World Drivers' Championship. Remember, last year when they won it, they hadn't since 1998. They've now gone back-to-back. But Piastri could have finished 3rd, but on a crucial pit stop, took him 5 seconds in the pits, only took Lando Norris 2 with that same pit crew, and Zach Brown and McLaren opted to not do the driver swap this time around, so Piastri gets the short end of the stick, and Norris ends up gaining 3 points. We will get to that probably around the bottom of the hour, second half of our show. But in NASCAR, Truck Series, Corey Heim now the most wins in Truck Series single season history with 10. Battled back from getting wrecked turn 1 lap 1 on Friday, ends up winning. Xfinity Series, Connor Zilic, he's just automatic. 10th win of the year for him. Cup Series, Shane van Gisbergen scores his 5th win, his 5th consecutive road course victory. Only Jeff Gordon has won more in a row in NASCAR Cup Series history. Good run for SVG. Was challenged in this race, though, a lot more than most of the road courses. Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell were very much in the mix. SVG gets the win, but the big story was at the end of this race. Ross Chastain, Joey Logano going toe-to-toe. Chastain, a dive move in the final turn, ends up spinning himself out and Denny Hamlin, so he misses out, and Joey Logano, who coasted around 15th place all race, gets into the round of 8, and the 3-time champion is still in it, and it means it's only the big 3 teams in the round of 8. 3 Gibbs cars, 3 Hendrick cars, 2 Penske cars. That's our pit stop, and that's where we got to get into this. We'll talk about SVG, we'll talk about Zilic and Heim later, but the story of the weekend, of course, is how the round of 12 came to a close. And Tim, you pointed it out, and I was watching Eric Estep's video today, and he pointed it out as well. If you are Denny Hamlin and you're looking big picture, you just didn't 2 weeks in a row. Bubba Wallace, it is your own team, but would have been a much, much easier competition in the round of 8. Ended up taking him out when he could have won and advanced, and potentially, with that spot taken, could have knocked out a big championship contender, like, say, a Chase Briscoe, after yesterday's results at the Roval, or even William Byron, with the way the race could have gone. Then, this week, he, of course, was unaware because the team didn't tell him, but think about it. I think he would have rather, even with everything that happened in 2022, I think he would have much rather had to deal with Ross Chastain in the round of 8 than Joey Logano. I said it after he made it through the round of 16. You don't want to let Joey Logano hang around in this format and he's there, and he's feeling good. And for everybody saying that he's been like terrible this year, he's up to 9th in the overall season points. So he's pretty deserving to be in the round of 8. He was actually ahead of Ross Chastain in full season points, and now he's gotten good when it matters most. He's heading to Vegas where he won last year. He's got Dega, he's got Martinsville, he's got Phoenix, he's got 4 good tracks ahead. And I think this is, now Denny Hamlin didn't really know, but this is a big miss for the whole field not getting Joey Logano out of there, Tim, because now Logano, I think, has a prime chance. If he didn't already before, he certainly does now to win the championship.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, too, a big talk coming out of Charlotte as well, and I just talked to you guys before we went live, is, there's a lot of people pointing the finger, too, about potential manipulation, rather if that's from Alex Bowman, Cole Custer, on the situation regarding what happened both between the 1 and the 22. And it comes down to this, again, I'm not trying to be anti-playoff system or so on, but this is a factor of what you're going to get with the playoffs. There's going to be desperation. There's going to be moments that decide things. But for the first time really in playoff history, really think about it. There was a scenario where a driver who already knew their fate could have had the decision in their hands to make their choice of racing for a championship easier or otherwise making it harder for themselves. And for Denny Hamlin, you mentioned it. We saw it in Kansas. I saw it firsthand. A bad decision with how he raced Bubba Wallace. And Bubba Wallace, credit to him. I know a lot of people said, he's really been a sore loser. No, he wasn't. He was just upset that Toyota didn't win. It's hard racing. He's not going to change how he races Denny Hamlin from this point on. He races you how you race him, and they move on from that situation. And Denny said, we started the conversation. We learned to grow, to go to Ross Chastain and have an opportunity to think, and this is what I don't understand for Denny Hamlin. You know the point situation going in. You may not know it throughout the race. But did it come through your head? I understand the team did communicate through you. But you're telling me it didn't come through anybody's minds at any point that, the 1 car is behind you? How's this point situation looking? If Joey Logano was behind him, right? I think you definitely would have been asking that question. So for Denny Hamlin, again, you got to think big picture. And I know Denny Hamlin's had ups and downs throughout his career in the playoffs. And it's surprising to this point that he hasn't won a championship with how consistent he's been. But this is why you haven't won a championship. Because there's 1 or 2 moments in the playoffs that it's a mental mistake that derails a championship for Denny Hamlin. And I know this one isn't as critical because it's not a crash, it's not an accident in pit road, it's not a speeding penalty. But you could have made your path to the Final Four easier, and yet you didn't. And that's going to come back to bite Denny Hamlin more than walling Bubba Wallace last week. Because I'm telling you right now, when I look at those Trackhouse cars, they have not been that fast in a lot of these races in the round of 8. Obviously, I know Talladega is technically a wild card. Chastain's one there, but Chastain was kind of at Vegas earlier in the year and the Vegas race before that. And obviously as well, Martinsville, yes, anything could happen. But Ross Chastain, even when he did the Hail Melon, was not really that good. He was just a borderline top 10 car and has been that pretty much a Martinsville. So I just don't know what they're thinking. But at the end of the day for Denny Hamlin, that may be the biggest mistake he has made in 2025 because you just can't afford to not think about your situation. And it would have been the one time not passing somebody or manipulating, in my opinion, would have been acceptable.
Recording in progress.
I think now going to the other side, and Tim, you talked about mental mistakes derailing things. Tropper, Ross Chastain should have comfortably made it into the round of 8. And it's funny, and we talked about this. I remember when we had the show right after the Indy 500, and it's just so overlooked at times, but it is a reminder that all of these guys are human, and it's just so disappointing, and it shouldn't take away from the accolades of these drivers that have put in the hours and the days and the months and the years training for this and getting better. And that was in regards to when Scott McLaughlin wrecked himself before the Indy 500 started warming up his tires. Ross Chastain can't pin this on anyone but himself, and he took full accountability, full responsibility after that race was over. He had not one but 2 horrible horrible mistakes, mental mistakes in the pits. You can't blame it on the crew, you blame it on him. First in stage 2, right after stage 1, coming out of the pits, did he forget that it was the Roval and not the oval? He keeps going straight when the pit road turns left. Did not react in time with the wheel. Said the wheel didn't react, but let's be honest, he just did not turn in time, and he ends up losing 15 spots. To his credit, he had a good car. Trackhouse had good cars, all 3 of them yesterday. Of course, SVG, but Chastain and Suarez had very solid cars. He was able to work his way back through, and then what happens? He speeds in the pits because he double shifts. That's a mistake that Frankie Muniz made at Michigan this year in the Truck Series. That should not be a mistake that's being made by a Cup driver competing in the round of 8. And I know people have mental mistakes, and I know Ross Chastain is talented, but you can't have 2 in that situation right there. I mean, you can't afford it. And even still, it took Paul Wolfe making that big call Tropper to get Logano fresh tires with the way tire wear was happening yesterday to even get Joey into a position where Ross ended up missing.
Hey, just don't forget, by the way, Joey Logano had a bad pit stop too, and he didn't capitalize on that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, by the way, the Frankie Muniz slander all of a sudden shots fired out of nowhere.
But I'm just saying that's the caliber of driver that makes that mistake. Not someone who should be competing for a Cup championship.
Fair enough. That's exactly where I'm getting though. With Chastain, it's like you could see the heartbreak in his post-race interview too. The accountability, I respect it, and I haven't felt that bad for a driver like in a post-race interview in a long time because he knows that he messed up catastrophically. And to see that for the Cup level talent, he's been in call Trackhouse high tier Cup ride, maybe like that B tier. But this is his 4th, 5th season with Trackhouse. He's a Cup Series veteran now already. That's what I'm getting at. He has the experience and the seat time under him where this is inexcusable. He's been in these cutoff races before. I mean, look at the Hail Melon. It's a little bit of a different scenario, obviously, but he has proven to hold up in these clutch moments before. And it just seemed like an overall collapse on Chastain's part, not the team at all. Trackhouse was firing on all cylinders. I mean, obviously, as you said, SVG is SVG. No one's catching up to him. But the road courses, that has elevated that entire program. So for Ross to not have 1 pit road mistake, but 2, and I remember seeing the in-car camera, he was like banging the steering wheel, and rightfully so. He was angry, but from that, there's no coming back from it. And with how fast that car was, even with 1 penalty, even with the stage 2 penalty, I think he would have still made the next round. And you were talking at the top, obviously, what happened with him, Denny Hamlin. Tim was talking about kind of Hamlin needing to know where they would be in point standings. But what frustrates me is that situation would not have needed to happen at all if Ross didn't have these constant mishaps. He should not have been that far back in the field to begin with. And that's what's crazy. But on the flip side, Joey Logano, and we have said this time and time again, Joey Logano is arguably the best there is in terms of staying in contention when he needs to. I mean, last year at the Roval, he was eliminated and then uneliminated, won the championship. This guy, you just can't get rid of him, and that's what makes him so good. And Paul Wolfe, yes, had a great call for fresh tires. That's why, Eddie, I'm not sure if you remember, it was last summer, I believe, we did our little crew chief Mount Rushmore. I put Paul Wolfe on there for modern day crew chiefs. It was an unpopular opinion at the time. I got a lot of backlash, but I remember seeing what he did with the young Brad Keselowski, continuing to build that, and now taking his talents to Joey Logano and getting 2 more championships since. Paul Wolfe is an elite crew chief, and Joey Logano is an elite driver. That combination has put them in position. And say what you want about Penske at the Roval and putting it on at the right time, I fully believe Joey Logano is going to make it to the Final 4. I don't know if he'll win the championship again. Maybe it could be Blaney. Maybe someone can surprise us. But the last thing we should be surprised about is that Logano found his way into a round of 8 yet again.
Yeah, I don't think we should be surprised about that at all. And as I said, I'm not saying he's deserving this year. It would still be him absolutely backing into a championship if he somehow wins this whole thing. But it's a lot more acceptable than when he was 15th in points last year and won a race. His only win came based on some crazy fuel mileage. To his credit, he was very fast at Texas Motor Speedway back in the spring, and it was between him and Michael McDowell for that win. He ultimately got it, and he's been fast all year. So credit where credit is due, but there's still separation between the other 7, who to me are the undisputed 7 best drivers in Cup this year: Elliott, Byron, Larson, Briscoe, Hamlin, Bell, and Blaney, and then to Joey Logano. But those will be the 8 fighting for the championship. Now, let's just briefly touch on the other drivers who were eliminated. I don't really think we need to spend much time on Austin Cindric. I thought he was going to be out in the round of 16. Only reason he ended up moving on is because Alex Bowman somehow fumbled it harder. I think the real question now becomes, there was this quote I saw from NASCAR that Cindric was crying after the race or something. I still would not be shocked if we head into 2026 and Austin Cindric is not in that 2 car. I don't know exactly what would happen. I would not be shocked if there's a driver swap between Cindric and Josh Berry. I'm just saying that at this point, that's still feasible with contracts because of the alliance for them to do that. Because again, there is no longer anything holding Austin Cindric into this ride now that his father got fired from the organization. So does he deserve a demotion? No, because he still made the round of 12. And as the quote unquote worst driver for a power team, he ended up going further than JGR's worst driver for sure, and sorry, Tim, but Hendrick's worst driver too. So he did make it to the second round. So,
not to mention, he got into the playoffs by actually getting a win this season. So.
Yes, he did. And it wasn't because someone ran out of fuel. Now, it was Talladega, but it was still a win. A win's a win. He does have 3 victories over the last 4 years, which is better than Ty Gibbs. So just saying. But I do want to talk about the 23-11 guys for a second. They're both eliminated. We know Bubba Wallace's one chance was Kansas. Bubba Wallace is not a great road course driver, ran between 10th and 15th all day, which is honestly a solid run for him on a road course. Reddick, though, starts on pole, Tim, beats SVG in qualifying, which is not easy to do, and then was pretty irrelevant. And I saw a tweet today, and I kind of agree with it. When it comes down to the strategy for the 45 team in this race, I didn't really get it because it felt like they were kind of tiptoeing between committing to a must-win versus trying to get points in the stages. I did not think points was a possibility for Reddick going into this race. I truly thought the only points battle would be between Joey and Ross, and I thought they should have fully committed to trying to win the race. But at least from my vantage point with the strategy, it was a little perplexing that I didn't feel like they were fully committed to going for the win, which to me felt like the only viable path for them to move on.
Well, I see it as a mix, truthfully, because when I look at what they did in the first stage, I view it as they thought this race was going to be chaos, because what they did there in that first stage to save a fresh set of tires and Tropper, not to go back 5 minutes, but for example, you talked about the Paul Wolfe decision with Joey Logano. I think, to be honest with you, when you look at that decision, people that didn't realize Joey Logano put on a scuff set of tires there. They didn't even put on a fresh set of tires. And I don't even think, to be honest with you, it worked out as good as what Paul Wolfe maybe thought it was going to work out for. But if for Tyler Reddick and his road course ability, had they have had a caution with 10 laps, 5 laps to go, who knows what would have happened? So to me, yes, I think that in the first stage, it's a little bit confusing and may seem that they were going for the points, but I think, hey, they threw a dart out there to see how bad the tire fall off was. And unfortunately, early on in that race, the difference of 10 lap fresher tires to guys who were on older tires was quite literally between 3 to 4 seconds. And unfortunately, this is the one road course race in 2025, which is, by the way, it stinks that it happened in the playoffs of all races, that tire wear felt like almost equivalent to a Bristol race. We weren't seeing guys blow out right rear tires, right? But we were seeing it be that so far effective that's, for example, the only reason why, not to go off track, but why Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and all these guys were able to keep with Shane van Gisbergen for as long as they could, because SVG is not as used to saving tires to this point in the next gen as he's had to in other road course races. So when I look at the 45s team, I don't know. I just say it like this. I think they threw a dart at the board, tried to see what their direction was going to go, and then they stuck with it. And at the end of the day, I think Tyler Reddick, truthfully, I've seen him in the media center. He's looked upset. He's looked distracted, and rightfully so. He's got a lot of personal things going on. And I pray for him. I pray for his family. And I hope that everything's going to be okay with his son. But at the end of the day right now, I think what's most important is Tyler Reddick and his family. And that's what it came down to, was hoping to get a win. But that's not what's most important for that team right now. As for compared to Bubba Wallace last week, where they felt like they needed a win, I feel like Tyler Reddick is the most important person right now in that entire organization throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, and of course, our best wishes out to the Reddick family with everything that's been going on off the track. But Reddick and Wallace eliminated from the playoffs, as was Cindric, as was Chastain. One more thing just to kind of tie a bow on this. I just want to get both of your thoughts quickly. Like, do we like the move that Chastain made? Because, first of all, and Eric Estep made this point, if he had been successful and wrecked Denny Hamlin there, would NASCAR have stepped in? Because remember, they removed Christopher Bell from moving on last year. They took away a win from Austin Dillon because they didn't like the way it was handled.
If you didn't penalize Ryan Newman for doing what he did to Kyle Larson at Phoenix, you should not do it to Ross Chastain.
And that's exactly what I was going to bring up, because I was going to make that point. NASCAR set themselves a precedent with this, and I think one of the more underrated bad moments in what has been a lot of questionable decisions by the sport that have led them to the position they are now. One of the underrated ones that people don't talk about is that in the very first playoffs in 2014, Ryan Newman slammed Kyle Larson on the final lap at Phoenix to transfer to the Final Four, and nothing was done, and the move was celebrated. People have kind of forgotten
knocked Jeff
about
Gordon
that.
out. That knocked Jeff Gordon out, that 2014 move too. So I remember that well.
Yes. But even though you remember that, and probably a lot of Jeff Gordon fans do, it's gotten forgotten about by a lot of people. But in reality, that's the time where NASCAR was like, okay, we're okay with this, and we're going to condone this. And now think how many years we've seen these moves made. Think back to the first Roval race with Jimmy Johnson and Martin Truex Jr. Now, that was for the win. That was a little different. But other transfer moments, obviously, the Hail Melon. Think back to everything that went down at Martinsville last year. Another one that's forgotten about, I think it was 2020 when Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, and Harvick tried to spin him on the final lap. Like, is this seriously what NASCAR wants in these quote-unquote Game 7 moments? You want great battles, but if it's just guys junking guys, and to the people who will play devil's advocate and say, oh, this could happen in any point system where you have a close battle at the very end, you have manufactured battles 4 separate times based on positioning with eliminations in this format. So just a cautionary tale once again, but Tropper, do you side with Tim here too? Like, if they didn't do anything to Newman, why now?
I think based off of precedent, I can understand that argument, but here's the thing that shifts in my opinion, and this might be the Columbia sport management student in me, but like you see, especially with the NBA these days, they have self-admitted that it is a highlight league. They are not getting the younger demographics, and I hate this to become another ratings conversation like we had last week, but it is incredibly relevant to where I'm going with this. NBA is a highlight league. Very few people watch full games anymore and has the attention span. They want to see the dunks. They want to see the buzzer beaters. And the social media teams, rightfully so, make those highlights known, and that's what gets the viewership. That's what brings them a sponsorship. That's what brings them the money. NASCAR, in that regard, really isn't that different. They're trying, especially with how low the ratings have been, and we extensively talked about it on the last show, so I'm not going to go into that. But think about it. They want to be a highlight league. That was the point of making the playoffs, these Game 7 moments to begin with. So maybe if it's too egregious, like the Austin Dillon situation at Richmond, for example, that NASCAR had to step in. But a lot of other times, if other drivers aren't going to make a fit, or it didn't seem like it's going to be a safety issue, NASCAR wants this. They want to advertise this on social media, putting everything on the line to make it to the next round, keep their championship hopes alive. You hear that in the broadcast booth too. That is what they want. They want the highlights. They want the Game 7 moments. I still don't think this is the way to do it with the playoff format, and I'll stand by it. The move itself, I think, is fair game under the circumstances. Do I like it? No, not at all. But I think it's fair game. And because NASCAR wants to keep these highlights alive for social media, for all the people that our age that don't want to sit down and watch a full race, this is their way to keep them engaged.
But the thing that's just so frustrating is you can still be a highlight league if you're NASCAR without this. You can still have great finishes. Let's be honest. The things that are going to get the most clicks from people that are not real fans are close finishes and big crashes. And you're going to get both of those without a playoff format. It's very possible, as long as you have a decent car. And even with a bad car, you got great finishes last year that ended up going viral on social media.
I agree 100%. But the car clearly isn't good enough on road courses and short tracks. And obviously, the playoffs came along before the next-gen car. But I think part of it is just NASCAR is too scared sometimes to be able to make that leap and say, we have full faith in our product and our drivers. Like the manufactured drama, I hate to say, they manufactured it for a reason, because if you look at the end of the Gen 6, the 550 horsepower package, those races were absolutely brutal. They needed something to talk about on the broadcast. And I don't want to sound like a NASCAR playoff apologist, because I have said many times on this show my gripes with the playoff format and how NASCAR goes about it. But if I have to think of any explanation, this is the reason why, whether it's good or not.
Can I dispute that real quick?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. I think that if you're for the playoff system, this race was spectacular for you because it had everything you could have. And I don't want to sound like Jordan Bianchi by any means here, but it told the story, the desperation of the points window and so on. Now, I'm on the side, and I think, Eddie, you're on my side of talking about the old playoff system, right, that we saw, the chase, 10-race span. Looking at this race, this would have been right now, this would have been race 6 of the playoffs. We still would have 4 to go. That move you saw from Ross Chastain would not have been made in a 10-race format. If this was a full 36-race format, this wouldn't have been made. But I will say this. It's all about the scenario and it's the situation. Because let's say, and for example, I'm not saying the Roval should be a championship race. I actually side with Jeff Gluck. I don't even know how I feel about a road course race, by the way, being in the playoffs, which is a different discussion. But let's imagine the Roval was the last race of the season. I don't know. Would I condone this? Would I condone this move if this was a championship deciding move? I may, right? Like it may be full-blown Chick Hicks status here, but the point is it's about the scenario. You would see this scenario happen, in my opinion, rather if it was a 36 race, rather if it was a playoff race. It just depends on what the scenario was. In this case, for Ross Chastain, again, whether you like it or not, about clicks, views, and so on, it doesn't matter. For Ross Chastain, his season was on the line right there, and you have to like what he did because of this format. But if this were a different format and this wasn't the last race, this doesn't happen. It does happen somewhere else if it's the last race. So that's my point. It's about the circumstances. That's what it comes down to.
But I think it's funny. Like, I think that would be the turning point that would change the playoffs for good, is if someone did that in the championship. And I know trucks kind of got to that point a couple of years ago, but everybody just buried it as, oh, it's trucks, they don't know what they're doing. So, but like if that happened in Cup or even Xfinity in a championship,
you would have seen in ARCA if somebody came even close to Brendan Queen this year in the standings. Let's be honest.
Can you imagine if ARCA had playoffs? What a disaster that would be.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about like if it had a full. Like, if somebody came close to Brendan Queen in a format this year, my point is you would have seen somebody try something desperate. Because, again, it's not about the ego, but it's about winning. Here's your shot. Here's your only ticket. You've got to do whatever you can. And that's why I can't fault Ross Chastain. Just like I couldn't fault Joey Logano last year for winning a championship. Whether you like him or not, you play the system. And Ross Chastain, he just wants it more than others. Let's be honest. He is willing to put himself on the line. He's willing to put anything on the line if it means having a chance to be a champion. And whether you like how he races or not, you have to respect it. And as a fan, going to be honest with you again, I don't want to sound like a Jordan Bianchi favoritist, but that's a selling moment right there, right? For the playoffs, whether you like it or not, it's a selling moment. I'm not for it because the ethical side of racing in me says that's not good. But circumstances made it the way it is, and you have to advertise it as is, which is why NASCAR is going to continue to advertise it as is until we have a change. And unfortunately, the only way we're going to have a change in the playoff system is with viewership. That's just a reality of it. So
I think a good way to sum it up. Now, so Chastain's out. SVG, his teammate, gets the win already. We explained how it was closer and why that was the case, but he's now won 5 straight. So now I pose the question about the 3 winners this weekend. Shane van Gisbergen has now won 5 straight Cup road course races on 5 very different road courses, all of different skill sets, all of different experience levels amongst the field, whether it's a place like Watkins Glen, where everybody's been to before, or Mexico City that was new for the whole field. He's won 5 straight, only Jeff Gordon's ever done more. Connor Zilisch got his 10th win of the season, has still not finished outside the top 5 since he crashed at Talladega in April. And Corey Heim, very underrated. Corey Heim better get a good ride next year. I've heard these rumors about him not even having full-time plans next year, which is insane. He's got 10 wins, too, in trucks, and had a truck that was completely bashed in 5 seconds into the race because Grant Enfinger, I guess, thought it was the oval, too, and forgot to turn in turn 1, took him out, and he battled all the way back, had to battle several drivers, including Connor Zilisch, and then ultimately won the race. So I throw it out there. 10 wins for Heim, 10 wins for Zilisch, or 5 straight on road courses for SVG. What is the biggest accomplishment that came out of this weekend? Tim, you've witnessed plenty of Corey Heim and Connor Zilisch wins at the track this year. So where do you fall on this?
I mean, for Corey Heim, it's greatness. And to be honest with you, we're seeing greatness on both ends. I mean, Connor Zilisch, what he has done this summer, and it's now extending into the fall. I mean, it was like this man hit his head. It's like, like you have something go wrong, and it's like all of a sudden, oh my God, you wake up with a superpower. Connor Zilisch has had a downfall, 2 downfalls, in fact, and he's come back stronger than ever, and it's incredible to watch. But at the end of the day now, it's like it's become the expectation. And the one sad part, not to go back on the playoff discussion, but the crazy part about all this, that when you listen to conversations from both of these guys, Eddie and Tropper, they're like, winning a championship doesn't define who I am in these lower series, which is the craziest thing to talk about. Because how do you have this dominant of a season? And people don't understand, it is so rare. I know Greg Biffle was very dominant in his Xfinity and truck days, but to see his records end up being shattered in the truck series and his rookie records being shattered in the Xfinity series, it's like, oh my goodness, we are watching something spectacular, and we're watching it happen at once. Now, I will say for Connor Zilisch, I mean, again, the expectations for him to go out there and dominate a road course when he doesn't have SVG competing against him, I mean, nobody really had a chance. Justin Allgaier looked good. Sammy Smith really surprised. But for Corey Heim to have problems on lap 1 and just find a way to fight back, now it stinks. I think Brent Cruz, if he doesn't pit, he wins that race. But, I mean, it tells the special kind of driver. And I do actually question this, not to spiral off track, Eddie, but I know about the charter agreement, right, with roster size and team size. That news about Denny Hamlin about its employees, with 2311, 2026. What about team size if you don't have a charter? What's stopping them from having 4 non-charter cars next year if they lose this lawsuit? I'm just saying, so it's like, for me, for Corey Heim, I view it as this. He's ready to be a Cup Series driver. He's proved it this year in his Cup Series opportunities. He is ready. Connor Zilisch is the next expectation-wise of Joey Logano, of showing up and being the young phenom that he is. You have 2 of the sport's bright young stars, and they've done something special nobody else has done. To me right now, Corey Heim, what he's done this weekend, sports special, but Connor Zilisch in general, what he has done this year is special from his background, because Corey Heim's been racing cars. He's been around the scene. NASCAR could have lost Connor Zilisch to F1, to the karting world, somewhere else, but they got him and they earned him. And what Connor Zilisch is doing with not much experience is something to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'd say as great as Corey Heim's accomplishment has been, and I'm not going to take away anything from the fact that he drove with that damaged truck from the back to the front at the Roval, Connor Zilisch is the biggest accomplishment of the 3 this weekend. And credit to SVG, too. 5 straight road course wins. I don't care how much experience he had in supercars. To come over here and be this dominant on road courses is unbelievable. But Connor Zilisch is doing it on every type of track. And, I mean, Corey Heim has some competition. Connor Zilisch has a lot of competition in the Xfinity Series, including his own teammates. I mean, Sammy Smith has been very solid this year. Justin Allgaier is a legend of the Xfinity Series.
How does Carson Kvapil not have a full-time ride next year? I understand he signed that deal potentially with Penske to be a future, but it is ridiculous that he could potentially be a Final Four driver in the Xfinity Series this season and not have a full-time ride next year.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Crazy.
But also with JRM too, another pivot. Just remember the quality of those JRM cars. And that's not taking away from Connor Zilic. This is actually proving how good the competition is. For the Roval, JRM had the first ever 1-5 qualifying sweep.
Yes.
And guess who was in 6th place? The 1700 Motorsports affiliate car of Corey Day. The JRM, the competition for Connor Zilic, the cars, for especially Justin Allgaier, I could easily see Allgaier being that guy to compete with Zilic every single week, which he has. But the fact that Zilic has risen above all of it, regardless of the obstacles that he's had to go through this season, is genuinely insane. I mean, we talk about these all-time historic seasons in the history books, but the fact that there are 2 young, dominant drivers that already have 10-win seasons before the final race, like it is absolutely incredible. The fact that we are even able to compare legendary seasons as they're happening at once is mind-blowing to me. So Corey Heim, he's ready. Connor Zilic, as far as I'm concerned, he's ready, even though he's had less Cup starts. Both of them, 2026 Rookie of the Year battle would be absolutely incredible. I don't know if we're getting that, but also with Corey Heim too. Remember, I think the streak might have been broken not too long ago, but there was one point earlier in the season where, dating back to last year, I think he led at least one lap in like 25 consecutive races. Who does that? Not even Kyle Busch in his prime when he was going down to Truck and Xfinity was pulling that off. To have double-digit win seasons as a rookie. I know Corey Heim's a little bit older. What's he, 23 or something like that? But Zilic, 19. He's not even 20 yet. The fact that these guys are doing this at Cup Series is the highest level of stock car racing, but essentially one tier below, being able to do this at such a high level of performance needed is truly remarkable. And both of those guys are going to be Cup champions, in my opinion, going forward.
Yeah, flowers deserved for both. And I just hope, with as problematic as this format is, they could win their next 3 races and then finish second at Phoenix and lose the championships. So let's just hope that doesn't happen, because both of them deserve the title. But clearly, as Tim said, with their mindsets, they care about the accolades of the wins more so than the championships at this point, and both of them breaking records this year. But we'll leave it at that on NASCAR. We're going to circle back to NASCAR at the end and tweets of the week. Let's go to Formula One. Singapore Grand Prix. Constructors Championship clinched for McLaren. We'll talk about them in a second, but I just want to talk quickly about George Russell, because I was very high on George Russell really early this season. Him and Antonelli were really consistent to begin the year. Antonelli finished 6th or better in 4 of his first 5 F1 starts. I don't care if he was driving for Mercedes. That's a very difficult feat, especially when we've seen how much the rookies have struggled this year, 2 of them losing their rides within the first 5 races of the season. Then they kind of went into a rough patch starting around Monaco throughout the summer. We didn't really talk much about Mercedes. They almost seemed like they were behind McLaren, Ferrari, and Verstappen at times, but they have risen back to the occasion. They're now surely in second in the constructors' standings again, and George Russell picks up a victory and didn't really face much resistance at all, Tropper, from Verstappen, who's been amazing out of the summer break, or either of the McLarens, who, besides the bad pit stop for Piastri at a clean day, George Russell just dominated. And in a season where we've talked about McLaren and then Verstappen, he's got another multi-win season, and George Russell just continues to find ways. And I am just waiting for the year when the pieces come together for Russell, where he can actually contend for a championship, because I don't think he's that far off. And if next year, with all of the regulation changes, Mercedes is in a good place, George Russell could be right there to compete for the driver's title in a year's time.
Yeah, this was just the shot in the arm that they needed. I mean, I don't want to say it's been a rough season, but obviously George Russell isn't in the championship hunt this year. But I think, admittedly, I didn't get to see most of the race, watch the highlights, but I remember post-race him saying that it makes up for 2 years ago. I honestly didn't remember what happened, but I do remember he kind of blew the lead and there was something that happened. So don't quote me on that. But point is, he wanted this win and he took it. Like not too many other problems besides what you said, the McLaren pit road error for Piastri, but this was just a straight up race. And yes, Singapore isn't exactly a track with maybe the most passing zones in the world, but at the same time, he held off Verstappen, he held off Norris, Piastri, anyone else that could contend, and it was just a good win for him. And as you said, with the regulations next year, you never know if Mercedes has the car. George Russell is going to be the guy to beat just by default. No discredit to Antonelli either. I mean, once again, he's been doing incredibly well and could be going on a similar path towards Piastri, where if they have the best car, Antonelli would be finishing right behind Russell in a lot of cases and being there in the fight. But for George Russell specifically, this is a win that he needed. And I just have to flip it too, where with Verstappen P2, that is rough just because we were talking on Friday's show how if he won this race, he would be able to fully sweep the calendar and comes up one position short yet again at his circuit.
Yep. And it's another different winner, too, which was the other thing we were talking about on Friday. This is now I believe, the 6th consecutive race at Marina Bay that's had a different winner, which is unheard of in Formula One. And that's now 8 different winners at the circuit since 2012. And none of them are Max Verstappen, which is really unbelievable. And like we said, he was so motivated to try to win this race. But a second's pretty good, too. And again, Tim, given how much Red Bull's car is just not good. Out of summer break, Verstappen turned the fastest lap in F1 history in qualifying at Monza, got the win there, had a great run at Baku too, and then ends up still second to George Russell. So I think in terms of drivers, I know whoever wins the championship, Norris or Piastri, we got to celebrate come December. But in terms of 2 drivers who team and car alone, ignoring that, in terms of their general performance, no matter what kind of engineering's going on in the background, flowers need to be given to George Russell and Max Verstappen because both of them have significantly outperformed their equipment this year. And that's why they're both multi-time winners in a year that's been dominated by McLaren.
Yeah, and I'll say it like this for George Russell, with how the season went and how the start of the year went, you almost felt like he was almost a dark horse for the championship with the mix of McLaren because of how consistent he was. But overall, I mean, for George Russell, I'd argue right now, if you put him in Lando Norris' seat, the championship battle's probably even closer between him and Piastri for what he has done this year. But for Max, I mean, again, to what we've seen coming out of the summer for him, I mean, it comes down to this. I mean, I said it last episode too, last Monday. What it comes down for Max is that the pressure is off now and he can just focus on racing. It's not about the future. It's not about whatever. We already know what this season's going to look like. I'm just going to go out there and do what I do. I know I'm not going to win a championship, but we're going to make the best of it. And I think for Red Bull moving to 2026, that is the most important part they can do right now. Because listen, this team has been so accustomed to being a champion, being at that level. And this year, they got desperate, right? They put somebody else in the second car to try to win a constructors, and it didn't work out. Just try to make something good out of a bad situation and put your, put your ring in the hat, or put your hats in, put your hands in, whatever you want to say. Going the next year, let's all put our hands in and go hoorah or whatever to get ready for 2026 before they go back to war. And what is a very short off season in terms of sports in general for F1. But I just think for Max, I mean, the pressure's off for him and he's just trying to make the best out of it. And he just wants to win. That's all Max wants to do. And I think next year, by the way, this is my future prediction. I think Max is going to win this race next year. I really do. I think he'll make it 7 in a row because he's just, when he wants something, he will get it. And next year is an opportunity where it's going to be fresh for everybody. And I think he will be the one that will get it.
Yeah, he's definitely proven that he can do just about anything. And it's crazy, too. I was looking at the constructors' standings. Red Bull's only 3 points behind Ferrari. It's essentially Verstappen. He's got all but 15 of Red Bull's points. Then you're against Leclerc and Hamilton combined, and those two only have 3 more points combined than Max Verstappen and his second car that's done pretty much nothing this year, which is really unbelievable. But the constructors' title does officially go to McLaren. They were more than double up on anybody else. There was no competition for that. But that brings us to our tweets of the week to wrap things up. And this tweet from motorsports.com they posted today was a screenshot of Zach Brown coming on the radio, congratulating both Oscar and Lando, and then what appears to be Oscar Piastri disconnecting said radio in the middle of the communication and the celebration on the radio. Obviously, drivers care a lot more about winning the Drivers' Championship than the Constructors' Championship. But with the way things played out here, you have to understand Oscar Piastri's frustration. And it's driving me crazy how many times we have to talk about this on the show, because there have been so many races this year where you've got these weird situations that happen with McLaren, and then it's, are they going to do the team orders? Are they going to not? And listen, I am not blind to the fact I acknowledged the first time this was really bad was in Oscar's favor when they gave him his first win in Hungary last year and told Lando to let him by because they gave Oscar a bad stop. And maybe they're trying to still make up for that, but it's clearly not 50-50 anymore. The vast majority of these situations where they go team orders or not seem to benefit Lando Norris over Oscar Piastri. I'll just say it like that, and it's been that way twice alone since they got back going after the summer break. So Oscar Piastri has a 5-second stop. Lando Norris has a 2-second stop. So let's do the math here. That's a 3-second gap. Lando Norris ends up finishing 2 seconds ahead of Oscar Piastri. So Lando Norris got gifted third place because they had a bad stop for Piastri. And I'm the same person who, in general, thinks it's bad that F1, the way it is, that you're supposed to do team orders. I think it's crazy that it's the same pit crew pitting both cars. I think that should be changed as well. But if you're going to have this principle, be consistent with it, because again, Oscar Piastri, in his fight for the Drivers' Championship, where he's currently ahead, loses more points because the team screws him over, and he has every reason to be upset, because when it's come to team orders or not, the one consistency is that it seems to benefit Lando Tropper more than it benefits Oscar.
Yeah, it definitely seems that in McLaren, whether it's true or not, but from the outside perspective, it's become pretty evident at this point that it seems like Lando is the golden child, like almost like the Ty Gibbs, not necessarily in how he's performing, but kind of like that is the teacher's pet of the team. And then Piastri is the one that's overperforming, but isn't getting the recognition he deserves. And it's just brutal. I'm not going to regurgitate everything you just said, Eddie, but that's basically how it's going down. I mean, Piastri deserves better. I actually didn't know that happened off of the radio communication at the end of the race, but I understand why he would disconnect and why he would be frustrated. Because on one hand, as a driver, yes, you're employed by the team. You want to win the Constructors' Championship. It means something. But obviously, for drivers, being the world drivers champion in Formula One, that is their priority. And if Piastri keeps getting screwed over and over again by his own team when his championship competitor is his teammate, if that's the guy who's being screwed over by inadvertently and keeps losing these points, I actually don't know what the gap in points is right now, Eddie. Maybe you could.
I think it's 23 or 24. Right?
Okay, so there's still enough there then for Piastri to be fine. But the fact that he even has to think about that, and it's within one race now, if there's another DNF and Lando wins, who do you think takes the championship lead? That's 25, 26 points if you have the fastest lap. So the fact that there is this such this internal issue within the team, and that hasn't seemed to be addressed in a year and a half. And if it has, it just hasn't been addressed properly. It's like the definition of stupidity or I think you know what I'm trying to say. I always forget this line, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different
New York Yankees.
Since one wearing a New York Yankees t-shirt right now. I have a whole different story about how I feel about the Yankees, but we'll save that for another day. It's just the fact that they are continuing this cycle and it's not working for Piastri and frankly for McLaren's reputation. I don't know what to tell you. If they're going to win the Drivers' Championship, I don't know which driver they're going to win it with, but who knows what the fallout's going to be, because whichever driver loses, especially if it's Piastri who somehow loses the championship, how's he going to take it and how's it going to affect the team morale going forward?
Yeah, and I just want to say, let's be real here. I know it's funny, it ties into our NASCAR conversation about Denny and about thinking big picture. Of course, this is a great time for McLaren. You just won the Constructors. You're going to win the Drivers. You've won back-to-back Constructors titles. But you got to be thinking at least a little bit about the future. And you also have to be cognizant of the fact that at this point, Oscar Piastri has proven that he is a much more important piece to your future than Lando Norris right now. Let's just put it like that. He is a more competent driver in clutch scenarios than Lando Norris is, and I think overall, driver-to-driver skill, I'd take Piastri over Norris right now. He's also younger. You're upsetting him to a point where if you are Oscar Piastri, when the next contract negotiations come up, and oh, by the way, the one certainty of regulations is that it's going to level the playing field, and McLaren is not going to be nearly as dominant probably in the next couple of years, you are slowly more and more upsetting this guy and is going to make him more and more willing to leave your team. And that's just the big picture thing that I feel like is not being thought about by Zach Brown, because it feels like all of these little things keep adding up to a point where Oscar Piastri is going to get fed up and eventually not want to be with this team anymore. And you're eventually going to be stuck with just an aged out Lando Norris.
Well, I got a question for you too, because correct me if I'm wrong, but early in the race, didn't Lando also make contact with Piastri in the opening? He
sure did on the first lap. Yes, and that was 100% on Lando. It's always Lando and never Oscar. I'm sorry, it just is.
So my point is this, and that not to go backwards on to why perhaps, he ends up disconnecting, but from a driver's perspective, right? It's frustrating because it's like, okay, you failed me, but you helped the guy who made contact with me. And of course, yes, he's my teammate. You gave him the faster stop, and it was like that the past couple of weeks. Now, don't get me wrong. We talked about a month ago here on the show about how it was the opposite, right? Lando had a bad pit stop and couldn't capitalize in the situation. Difference is Piastri had an issue in that race and Lando didn't capitalize. But at the end of the day, I mean, you have to feel some sort of respect, and maybe it's just the pressure for Piastri feeling like the walls are caving in and so on, and that's frustration that now the reality is set in that, it's starting to get close with the net race gap after these mistakes where, you're going to race your teammate for a championship, and there's a chance that your team could make the ultimate difference. If they have some catastrophe in pit road, or for some reason they can't get the tires in the car, they have some issue, and let's say Piastri finishes last, which likely would never happen, but something catastrophic could happen. Piastri's chance at a championship could be over. But it's the trust with the team, and again, me, Tropper, we don't know the conversations obviously go on, in the week in the world of F1 because it's so surreal with this group. But you have to feel the sense of frustration is coming from the fact that it feels like Piastri, just nobody is on his side as often, like you said, Eddie, of the 50. It's not a 50-50 split, maybe more 75-25, 80-20, whatever you want to put it as. And that reality of the pressure again of a championship and the mix of incidents and so on of how it's now starting to add up. Listen, being, nice only lasts so long. And if this continues to build up and this end of the season ends ugly, it'll end up with Piastri going somewhere else. And it'll likely be the number one competitor for McLaren, rather what 2026 looks or not. Because you can't treat somebody with disrespect so often and not side with them because they're just going to walk away. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun next few weeks to follow the F1 championship because both of these guys are going to be full on balls to the wall going crazy because they have no other competition anywhere near them. So there's almost like no threat of it. And clearly they don't seem to care that they're teammates. So I am very interested to see how this is going to play out. But speaking of things that I'm interested to see how they'll play out, and we'll leave it with this. Friday night, Bob Pockrass dropped a tweet that NASCAR had reached out to all of the team owners that did sign the charter agreement and Carl Long for some reason, because why not, to get testimonials from all of them, trying to get them to defend NASCAR. And the most poignant one of all to me was the Joe Gibbs one, where he basically said that this whole charade is ridiculous and that both NASCAR and the teams need to realize that they're not doing and try not to do damage to the sport that can't be undone. And that it's a very awkward position for JGR to be in, obviously, because they're in a technical alliance with the team, yet they signed the charter for their own personal benefit. Then you've got the Hendrick one that basically is the most PR written piece that I've ever seen before.
I'm Rick Hendrick. I've lasted so long in NASCAR. I've won such and such of races, and one paragraph of information.
Yes.
Carl Long's was very interesting. I mean, there's just so many of this, but I don't mean to interrupt you, Eddie.
No. Go ahead.
It's the thing, right? At the end of the day, the reason why they had the teams do this was to prove that the charter system should belong. 2311's argument, which is why this is so ridiculous, to go back to what Joe Gibbs is making. 2311's argument has nothing to do with the charter system. It has to do with how they're paying out the charter system. You can't have competition and make decisions. NASCAR is pretty much in firm control of everything because there's no drivers union and things. So the point is yes, I understand the team's worries that if there's no charter system, they'll fail. But that's not the argument. And NASCAR tried to tip the side saying, look, 2311 even agrees, which is why their points are relevant. And it's just getting to the point in court where they're doing dumb, petty things for no reason, which is exactly like what Joe Gibbs mentioned is so accurate. Because I'm telling you, when we get to December 1st, and I know I mentioned 2026 about how 2311, what happens and so on, right? Will they keep their drivers on charter and so on? Businesses are going to be impacted by this no matter what happens. And you have to hope in NASCAR's side, rather, if you're a team that has signed the charter agreement, it does not hurt you. Because if it does hurt you, everybody will be impacted. And these teams are not in control of that. That's the reality of that.
Well, look at what Joe Gibbs said.
I just want to say, Tropper, leading into that, because I know it's going to lead into that too. The irony of all of this as well is them saying part of the whole suit is 2311 Front Row Motorsports upset that NASCAR is like, oh, you can't slander us. You can't slander the charter agreement. The teams that signed this agreement that states that obviously are not going to slander NASCAR in their statements because they've agreed that they're not going to do that. So again, it's just everything's so backwards. And if you're a viewer of this show, December, I know, is kind of a dead time usually every year. I know we're going to have a lot of crazy stuff to talk about that's going to go on. Tropper, go ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun off season for sure for us. But I was just going to reiterate, like one of the quote that Bob Pockers pointed out in Joe Gibbs' statement. It was like, I do not want to be a witness, and I think it's important for this to be resolved before any real damage is done to the sport. That has to be the quote of the year because it's so relevant, quite frankly, and it really shows that everyone in the industry, it seems like, or at least the other team owners, want this to be over. They don't want their books to be open unnecessarily. It's just becoming way too much where I could even comprehend and explain it in a minute. But I didn't read all the statements from all the owners, admittedly. But it just feels so counterproductive at this point. It seems like NASCAR is trying to throw anything at the wall and see what will stick. Because there was one statement, I don't remember which team owner, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, completely fact check me. But what I thought I saw was one of them saying basically how the charter deal was signed, how it was so last minute, and they were basically coerced into signing it. Doesn't that seem like it invalidates NASCAR's argument for monopolistic practices? Like NASCAR thinks that's supposed to help them, but it hurts them. Denny Hamlin in the media center, I don't remember who reported on it, but he said something along the lines that I think it helps us more than it helps them. And I think he's right. I honestly don't know what else to say other than the fact that we're less than 2 months away and a settlement does not seem likely. I could see some last minute Thanksgiving shenanigans potentially, but I'd say there's at least a 90% chance this is going to trial. The books will be open and NASCAR will be changed forever.
Yeah, this is going to get wild.
You know who I don't want to be right now, by the way? I don't want to be Roger Penske in this scenario because having to defend the charters and then like, oh yeah, I own a series where I just made a whole system based off of this. That's got to be the worst thing in the world because now it's opened up a can of worms of learning what routes he can or can't go. Otherwise, he's going to find himself getting sued. Just how NASCAR is by teams.
Yeah, it's so awkward for him because he's literally NASCAR. He owns the biggest track too, just like how NASCAR owns Daytona.
What does that mean for IndyCar now? Can they would IndyCar become the monopoly? Would Roger Penske be the next one in line to get sued? Would he be forced to change by default depending on the outcome of this suit? Like what does that mean for the rest of the motorsports world?
This is gonna have. It's just so funny how NASCAR keeps calling these witnesses and trying to get other people involved that just do not want to be involved in this. Joe Gibbs, a prime example right there. Remember also in the summer where they were trying to get F1 and the FIA
Liberty Media?
Yes, like why would they care? Why would they want to get themselves involved in this at all? It's just this is going to be a mess come December, especially after, let's not forget what happened the last time they were in the courtroom and you got all these texts that are getting exposed and Michael Jordan dropping expletives. I mean,
this is why Denny Hamlin needs to win the championship. We need to see what would happen if Denny wins the championship and then has to go to court a month later.
Do you think he'd hand over his championship trophy along with like the Charger thing if they lost? Just like, I don't need it anymore. Just walk off into the sunset. Because Denny has mentioned multiple times. I'm just saying it. I saw it first person at Gateway. He said, hey, the last race I want to win is the last one. I'm pretty darn confident Denny Hamlin wins the championship this year. That man is walking away after Phoenix no matter what happens in that lawsuit. That is all I'm saying. So,
I'd say there's a chance, but I don't know. I mean, he's under contract. He has respect for Joe Gibbs. I can't say definitively that he would leave. I think he would stick it out like for a retirement year, but I do see your point, Tim. If he can win a championship, he's going to be checked out.
Yeah, I could see Denny Hamlin milk out a retirement tour, though. It's just he seems like the type of person who would very much enjoy that. But
that's my point. Like, if he wins the championship, next year will be his retirement tour. Go as many wins as possible, get booed every track as possible, and regardless of the outcome with NASCAR, hell, he could go scorched earth and completely, talk NASCAR throughout the entire season. That would be something to see.
Yeah, but we'll leave it at that. Great show today. Talked some NASCAR, talked some F1. We're going to have more content because our writer Kelsey Christman was at the Roval. She said she's got some videos. Maybe one of them's a pit stop. I know a lot of you seem to like those. So
once again, I think we're up to maybe 1.5 million now. We are getting thousands and thousands of views an hour. So whatever what I don't know if we should be thanking the algorithm, but I'll thank the viewers too. If this is big for us, and it's when
I'll thank Tim for telling Riley to shoot that.
Well, absolutely. I think the commonality comes down to this. I think people like three things, other than NASCAR. That is, Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, and Alex Bowman. I don't know what it is. It's just the three most consistent things. That's the key to life in racing. Just talk about those people.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever works, and we're only continuing to grow, and that's what I love to see. So
I'm sorry. I say four. Chase Elliott. You can't forget about Chase Elliott.
Absolutely
not. NASCAR's most popular driver, and he's still fighting for a championship along with 7 others. And we will get you set for that first race of the round of 8 at Las Vegas on Friday at 12 o'clock. But for Adam Tropper, Tim Moore, I'm Kalegi signing off at this episode of Motorsports Today. We will talk to you again on Friday.